Hi everyone. So until I figure out how to upload more spectacular PowerPoints, this one's just going to be pretty basic. There's not going to be lots of things flying in, so just so you know, I'm working on that. This lecture is going to talk about the United States and Texas, the Oregon Territory, slavery, and the Compromise of 1850. So, the United States' involvement in Texas and then a part of Mexico began in 1821 when Stephen F. Austin took possession of land grants made to his father by the government of Mexico. In the following years, more Americans settled in Texas. A new Mexican government in 1839 restricted American immigration and outlawed slavery in Texas. 6 years of tension, attempted negotiation, and government instability in Mexico led to war in 1836 between the American settlers and the Mexican government. After losing the Battle of the Alamo in San Antonio, Texas, the settlers won a victory and achieved recognition as an independent nation. Jackson finally recognized the independence of Texas. Her formal petition for annexation by the United States was rejected by the Senate in 1837 because anti-slavery members of Congress objected. Negotiations, which included the threat by Texans that they would ally with England and France, went on for several years. John C. Calhoun, Secretary of State in President Tyler's cabinet, finally negotiated a treaty of annexation with the Republic of Texas, but the Senate rejected it also. Northern abolitionists saw the possible annexation of Texas as a plot to extend slavery. Southerners saw it as an area of economic opportunity and feared English influence on an independent Texas. In signing the treaty, Tyler had promised to send federal troops to defend Texas from a possible attack from Mexico. In spite of the Senate's rejection of the treaty, troops and ships were moved to defend Texas from possible attack by Mexico. This issue of the annexation of Texas, as well as the Oregon boundary dispute, became major issues in the election of 1844. After the election of Polk in 1844, Tyler asked Congress to accept the Texas Treaty by a joint resolution of both houses. This would require only a majority and not the 2/3 vote required by the Constitution for the ratification of treaties. This ploy to get around the Constitution was successful. By this treaty, Texas became a state without going through a period as a territory. The slavery issue was addressed by extending the Missouri Compromise line of 3630, and that should be a degree sign, thus allowing slavery in Texas. Polk, in his inaugural address, said the issue of the annexation of Texas was between Texas and the United States alone and did not involve other nations. Mexico obviously disagreed and broke off diplomatic relations, claiming Texas was Mexican territory. There were other issues of dispute with Mexico, such as Mexico's desire to stop United States immigration into their territory of California. President Polk sent John Slidell to Mexico to negotiate, but negotiations stalled and the Mexican government was overthrown in a coup d'etat. Independent Texas and Mexico had not agreed on the southern border of Texas, with Texas claiming the Rio Grande as the border, and Mexico, the Rio Nueces, I'm not pronouncing that great, farther north, with negotiations at a standstill. Troops were moved into this disputed territory on the Mexican-Texas border. No resolution of the border dispute was in sight. President Polk asked for a declaration of war, which Congress voted on May 13, 1846. Many voted against this war, which ultimately lasted for 2 years. The Mexican War from 1846 to 1848 was fought in several areas. First in California, where United States settlers gained control of the area, with aid from Captain John Charles Fremont of the United States Army and Commodore Robert Stockton of the United States Navy. Second, in the New Mexico Territory, where a United States expedition occupied Las Vegas, Taos, and Santa Fe, securing this large area for the United States. Third, in Mexico, which United States forces invaded, capturing Monterrey, seizing the port of Veracruz, and finally capturing the capital, Mexico City, in September 1847. The war was then quickly brought to a successful military conclusion. Several famous generals of the Civil War, including Robert E. Lee, gained experience in these various campaigns. While the fighting was progressing, Congress fought over war aims. The Wilmot Proviso, an attempt by Whigs to exclude slavery from the conquered territory, was defeated, but focused attention on the issue of the expansion of slavery to new territories. John C. Calhoun led the Southern opposition to any restriction on slavery in the territory. Settlement of the Oregon boundary. While the Mexican War was starting, a peaceful solution to the Oregon boundary dispute was achieved through negotiation with England. While the compromise did not satisfy the expansionists and forced Polk to reject his party's campaign slogan of 54-50 or fight, it avoided war with Britain. The Oregon Territory was divided at the 49th parallel, which was the border between the United States and Canada, from Lake of the Woods to the Oregon border. England got all of Vancouver Island. With the Senate's approval, the territory, later divided into the states of Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, was added to the United States, which now stretched from coast to coast. According to American nationalists, this was the manifest destiny of the United States, and for many, the culmination of God's plan for the nation. The agreement helped persuade England to remain on the sidelines during the Mexican War, in spite of her earlier support for an independent Texas. It also illustrates the benefits from negotiation and treaty making in international affairs, as one can thus gain the support of nations in time of need. England's action was also a sign of the importance of both nations in the United States-English trade relationship, which had been growing since independence. With the acquisition of new territory, the question of slavery arose again, and it became a crucial issue for the nation. This question is very complex. At its core was disagreement over whether Congress could outlaw slavery in the territories or whether the inhabitants should have control of the matter. This latter view was dubbed popular sovereignty or squatter sovereignty. The question of slavery had been a potentially divisive issue from the time of the Constitutional Convention. After much debate, the Oregon Territory was organized and slavery was outlawed. President Polk signed this bill, stating it upheld the Missouri Compromise of 3630 because Oregon was north of that line. After the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed, Polk tried to get both California and New Mexico organized as territories, but his proposal failed because of the slavery issue. Both territories were technically below the 3630 line of the Missouri Compromise. Polk had said he would serve a single term. In the election of 1848, the Whig candidates, General Zachary Taylor, a hero of the Battle of Buena Vista in the Mexican War, ran for president, and Millard Fillmore of New York ran for vice president and defeated the Democratic candidates. Slavery was a major issue of the campaign. A new third party, the Free Soil Party, which opposed popular sovereignty on the slavery issue, was the deciding factor because it took votes away from the Democrats. President Taylor died in office in 1850, the second president to do so in 10 years. Millard Fillmore became the 13th president. And an interesting fact is that Zachary Taylor was the last president to own slaves. And we'll wrap up today with the Compromise of 1850. Congress was badly split on the issue of slavery in the territories, and in 1849, when California applied for admission as a state, there were 15 slave and 15 free states in the Union. The population of California had grown rapidly as a result of the discovery of gold in 1849, which started a great gold rush to California. The territory moved quickly towards statehood. Californians organized a state government and wrote a constitution outlawing slavery. The growing controversy over slavery alarmed both moderates and conservatives in Congress. Henry Clay again stepped forward with a compromise solution, which quieted matters briefly, but proved to be the last compromise before the slavery issue tore the nation apart in the Civil War. Clay's compromise included 5 acts, and the 5 together are known as the Compromise of 1850. The compromise had something for each sectional interest. 1. California was entered as a free state. 2. New Mexico was organized as a territory with no mention of whether it would be slave or free, but it was understood that popular sovereignty would prevail when the territory applied for admission. 3. The organization of Utah as a territory was approved, and it would enter free or slave as determined by its written constitution. 4. The prohibition of the slave trade in Washington, D.C., and the non-interference by Congress with slavery in Washington, D.C., was established. 5. A strong fugitive slave law, which called for the return of runaway slaves to their owners at federal government expense, was passed. The Union was saved, but many Northerners were prepared to hinder the enforcement of the fugitive slave law. It was a compromise all could accept for the moment, because it had something for each interest.